What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Inside the Burrow. My name is Jacob Kelly, joined with Zach Weinberger, JJ Metz, and today we're joined by Richard Pereira. Richard, welcome to the show. Welcome to the first time on the podcast. How are you doing today, sir?
Uh, hey Jacob, happy to be here on Inside Burrow. I know it's gonna be an exciting one, especially when we're gonna talk about fall camp. And since I've been to every session so far, it's gonna be a good one.
Yeah, I did think it was a good idea to bring you on today since you are the one that's been covering the Owls the most so far through camp. If you guys watching like to keep up day to day with the goings on, Richard's done a lot of excellent work on the website, so please go over and check that out after you're done watching today's episode. But as well as Richard, joined by Zach, JJ. Zach, how we doing?
Doing great. A sweltering day in paradise to say the least. Obviously, it felt like 150 degrees outside, but that's
Yep.
part of that's part of the magic. That's part of paradise. Pretty cool stuff brewing for the Palm Beach Post as well. So I mean, listen, it's a good day to be an FAU fan. A lot of exciting stuff happening.
It really is. And then last but not least, JJ, what's your experience been like so far going to camp?
It's been great. I mean, very, very good position battle so far. Very eager to get into this pod.
Yeah, and with that, we'll get right into it. And today, the day of recording it is Wednesday. Today was the first day that the team got into pads. They've been doing non-padded work so far. Richard, you've been there more than anybody. You've been there every single day. What has the intensity level been like, both in non-padded practices and then the switch over today to the padded practices?
Well, when it comes down to it, the intensity was high regardless of whether they were in pads or just in shells, as mentioned by Tom Herman during the post interview after today's session. It doesn't really matter what condition they're in. From the first day to this day, where they finally got to be in full pads, the intensity is just nonstop at a high level, like a lot of accountability to be met, with the coaches demanding a lot of accountability from the players needing to fulfill their responsibilities and to execute the drills that they were doing all throughout each session. It's just very high. It's nonstop. It's very good, great to see for an FU fan wanting to see the most out of their football team.
JJ, so you've been there a little bit less, but could you confirm everything that Richard just said?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he's totally right. It was awesome days of fall camp in the last week that we saw.
Yeah, it's been a lot of work going on, and we're going to go down the position groups, talk about position by position, as there's a lot to be talked about and a lot of decisions to be made over the next few weeks, as we are within a month till that first week one game against Monmouth. We're going to start off with a quote by Coach Charlie Fry, and talking about these guys are out there competing, trying to make the best decisions they can. Get back to the film room. We're all working together, referencing the quarterback situation, building a togetherness, and building something that, remember, we're all on the same side. So Zach, I'm going to start off with you. So it is the assumption that Casey Thompson is going to end up as the week one starter, battling out with Daniel Richardson. But is that a safe assumption to make based off what you've seen?
I think it is, but I think like Tom Herman said during the spring, and he's just sort of repeating as well, everybody's kind of starting at square one. No one's getting like a head start or anything, especially when a guy misses the spring. He's still learning the offense. I asked Herman today about Casey Thompson, and just from the eye test kind of being out there from the practice view that we have, he's already starting to try to be in that leadership position, kind of riling up the offensive line, the running backs, and the receivers, which is really great to see. And again, I've made the comparison on the last pod about kind of N'Kosi Perry missing the spring, but still trying to get that chemistry with the offense. And you're seeing the same thing with Casey Thompson, and he had a lot of great throws today. But again, it seems like even Herman sort of sees that as well. But again, I don't think you should really get away from Daniel Richardson, who's really had the D1 experience besides Casey Thompson, who's been in the offense a little longer. I do think that during the spring game and during spring in general, he looked like QB1. So he's definitely the main competition. But even Kerman saying that Ben Ballard was kind of in discussion as well. And you also have Tyreek Starks and Michael Johnson, who's been dealing with some injuries. So the QB room is very competitive compared to what it was with N'Kosi Perry. That's the only difference, is that besides N'Kosi Perry, the competition was a little light compared to what it is now. So I do think that it's going to be a little harder, but I think expecting by week 1 against Monmouth, Casey Thompson will be under center. But once again, it's been such a really fun battle to watch, and to see a guy like this who's so talented, who's had a lot of great starts at P5 schools. It's been really, really cool to see.
Yeah, it is a nice competition to be having, and JJ, I'll get into you here with this question. It is definitely a two-horse race of the quarterback position. We're going to assume it's Casey Thompson, but you have Casey Thompson, you have Daniel Richardson. What differences have you seen, JJ, with the two running the offense and just go out there and executing drills?
Yeah, I mean, from what I've seen, Casey has basically thrown everything, like right to the receiver. No overthrows, no underthrow. We didn't exactly see that with Daniel. I mean, he was not as accurate as Casey. He still did a very good job. But in terms of the differences I've seen Casey be more accurate. But I do want to mention that Daniel has been taking reps with the starting O-linemen that you would expect, like Chaz Neal and Jordan Church and the starters. But by week 1 against Monmouth, I do expect Casey to start. But I don't think he's ready yet.
Can you back, or Zach, you got a comment?
It's just a little bit, just kind of the discussions that me and Richard were having during the practice, and he was just sort of telling me what he's seen in the past and what I was seeing today. Is that you're kind of seeing Casey and Daniel really alternate between the receivers who are the ones and the guys who are the twos. So I think that's sort of almost a clear inclination that's kind of between those two guys. But again, I don't think it's that sort of safe to say, like, okay, just these two guys. I don't think Herman's going to go out and say that. But again, it is interesting to see that you're seeing those two guys trying to build up that chemistry. And again, only the guys with D1 experience, right? So it makes sense. But I agree with JJ. It just seems like that Casey Thompson is going to be that week 1 starter at the moment.
Yeah, and when you look down with that depth chart behind those two guys, it has been a rough road for some of the other guys down there. We've seen some injuries. We've even seen COVID pop up in the training camp so far. But Richard, is there anybody to you that outside of those top two has emerged themselves to potentially push for that top spot, or at the very least cement themselves in as the QB3?
Yeah, so of course, speaking when it comes to the quarterback room, there's like 6 quarterbacks, including Casey and Daniel Richardson. And then 2 of them being newcomers to the team as freshmen, as the latest recruits from this year. And when it comes down to it, for this year, I would personally think Tariq Starks, who during spring football, Herman complimented his skill, but he had raw talent, and they need to have him develop on that. And so far, he's looked pretty solid with his passing and how he's ran the offense through his unit in particular. So his potential of being the 3rd string quarterback on this team is pretty good.
Yeah, and to add on to what Richard said, I agree. I think Tyreek will be that 3rd quarterback. I mean, maybe Michael, but Johnson Jr. But I am very, very impressed with redshirt freshman Luke Rucker, who is a transfer from University of Florida. He's looked so calm, under composure. He's thrown everything right to the receiver, so accurate. I mean, I think that he could definitely make a push for that 3rd string, and he's a redshirt freshman. I think that maybe next year, the year after, he could take over that starting role, and I'm so impressed with Luke Rucker. I mean, he was a highly rated recruit, top 1,200 national player out of high school. So, I mean, he has the talent. Can he put it all together? It seems like he has in camp. So I think that definitely he could get that 3rd string role.
Yeah, that spot is going to be very important competition, because we all know it's going to be only one season with Casey Thompson, and Daniel Richardson is coming in with some experience himself. So to see the success from some guys who are even redshirt freshmen is a bright sign to see, compared to previous 2 years where it was pretty much going into camp a pencil in of who's the number 1, who's number 2, who's number 3, and no real hope behind that QB1 position if it didn't live up to the standards. So it's a bright side to see how the competition is going at the quarterback position. And the wide receiver, I'd say it's just as exciting. We see Jaquan Burton talking about a quote from yesterday say, we had a couple of the guys got together, put in a lot of work this off season, and from the time winter started to now, we put in the work and really feel like it's paying off. Talking about him and the other wide receivers, we've seen LaJohntay and Jaquan step up as the wide receiver ones, mostly working with Casey Thompson. We'll start with Richard. How is the chemistry looking between those three on the field?
When it comes to those receivers, they look to be in sync. LaJohntay Wester, who Charlie Fry complimented as one of the best guys who are putting in all the effort throughout each session, and how it's inspiring to see Wester out there putting in all this effort to achieve his future goals of maybe being a professional player in the NFL, possibly. And Wester definitely has the potential to do that, considering what he did last year with his career high in touchdowns and receiving yards. So the potential for Wester being a receiver in this Owls offense is sky high, especially if Casey Thompson or Daniel Richardson were to be the quarterback, especially with their excellent ability to pass the ball and to throw the ball in the air, and for Wester or Burton or maybe Tony Johnson, maybe BJ Alexander to make those receptions to generate the offense that the Owls can possibly make this year.
And you just mentioned two guys in BJ Alexander and Tony Johnson that are running as the twos. Zach, what have you seen between those two in terms of trying to push up for that number one wide receiver role?
Yeah, I mean, those two guys are definitely impressed. But again, I think I mentioned this the last pod as well. If you look at some of the deepest positions on this team, wide receiver is one of those. And it goes beyond LaJohntay Wester, who even Herman was asked the question, who have you seen kind of reach that mental toughness that you want to see from these players? And he was quick to say LaJohntay Wester. And again, N'Kosi Perry, that was a target for him. And Casey Thompson, and like Richard said, Casey Thompson and Daniel Richardson, whoever is that QB1, that's going to be a focus. So it just has to be, if you want to be successful here, LaJohntay Wester is wide receiver one. But guys like Jay-Sean Platt and Ason Cobb and Tony Johnson, BJ Alexander, and I'm not even done with that list. It's too deep. I don't think this is a position that's going to be a liability anymore. I think this is going to be one of the more consistent groups on the field. And I'm excited to see how it plays in week one and as we get through the scrimmages.
And I would like to chime in on Devin Price, the transfer from Texas A&M. Charlie Fry complimented his ability to catch the ball, and from what I've seen from him in practice, he has a very strong frame and has a lot of pace to his game. So if he were to get plenty of reps in this offense, of who could possibly be the starting quarterback competition, he could really do some great things should he succeed very well under Herman's direction, under Charlie Fry's direction, and within the offense as well.
JJ, who in this wide receiver group has stood out to you?
I kind of want to say LaJohntay because he has been so good. I mean, he's so electric. Every single time the ball is thrown to him, he just somehow finds a way to make catches, even when the balls haven't been particularly accurately to him, he still has made a catch. So I want to say he's really impressed me, but also Jaquan Burton has been very, very good as well. So those two guys I expect to be the 1-2 punch in terms of the wide receivers. And that's pretty much like what I have seen so far in camp, that those two have really put a gap between everyone else.
Yeah, it looks like a very deep wide receiver group, and it's a problem that you want to have. And something we spoke on the last podcast in terms of a problem that you want to have is how this offense is going to figure out how to get their three-headed running back game all involved, being Larry McCammon, Za'Barry Mobley, and Kobe Lewis coming in as a transfer. Larry McCammon did miss practice on Tuesday due to his graduation, so I just want to say congratulations on being able to do that. Big achievement. Zach, Richard, and myself have all experienced that. JJ, a couple years away from getting to that point. But it's a three-headed running back group that, like we spoke on both the podcasts that we did last week and with Coach Ed Warner about getting those guys involved. Zach, what did you see today on how they're trying to get all three of those guys involved?
Yeah, it's clear that there's not like a person who's really standing out from the bunch, and that's not necessarily a bad thing either. I mean, Obviously, Larry McCammon, you expect him to get the very first touch of the game week one, because he's been the more proven guy. But I mean, guys, you can't get out guys like Kobe Lewis and Zuberi Mobley, who we spoke to today, who's doesn't really even see it as a competition. It's more of a team effort. He knows that there's three guys, including him, in this running back room that have a possibility of going for over 1,000 yards. I mean, it's possible with these three guys, and it's going to be something that's going to be focused, and that's why to me I felt that the offense has been looked a lot very one-dimensional the past couple of years, maybe under the Willie Taggart era, where he really hasn't maybe went to the run as much, or he went too much through the air here. And it's one of those kind of battles that Charlie Fry and Tom Herman have to think about. What do we want to focus here? Because if the opposing team is going to focus on trying to guard the ground game, we'll hit them with the air game. I mean, this is why I think the offense is going to be very exciting to watch this year, because really they can hit you in the mouth in so many different ways here. And again, just kind of going to the three running back system, I'm really interested to see how they're going to use them as kind of the fall camp proceeds, especially as we get into the scrimmages. Because again, these three guys, just you have to watch out for every single one of them. And I'm just interested, and it also helps that all three guys are complementing this experienced offensive line. Obviously, we had Ed Warren on the show here. It helps when you have a great coach like that, when you have a great offensive line. And again, even just like the stat of the returning production coming back from last year, I think ESPN ranked FAU third in the nation in terms of returners. So that's huge. It's huge, and it's also huge to have a first-year head coach getting this amount of sort of guys that are experienced. So the running game and the ground game are going to be really fun to watch this year. And if you like running the ball, because I know that's a huge sort of talking point in the NFL now about running backs, watch the FAU Owls this year. It's going to be exciting.
Yeah, thankfully we don't have those same worries about deciding whether we want to pay our guys. They're already there on the roster, and some of those worries that you have to come up with in pro football, not the same. And it's great to be able to return so much talent, especially with a new system when you have three guys who are very familiar with themselves, as well as they already have one of their coaches returning in. So there's a lot of familiarity there. JJ, what have you seen from those three guys in that running back group as a whole?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I really like what Zuberi has done during camp from what I've seen, but like Zach said, I don't think one guy in particular is gonna have that workhorse. I think they're all gonna mostly share the workhorse. I mean, Kobe has been very good through the ground, but there have been a couple of plays in practice where Zuberi would catch the screen and run it down for the touchdown, and he's really caught the ball very, very well. So from what I've seen, I think Zuberi has really stood out to me, but I expect Larry, if I had to choose one, to be sort of the number one back, because of his experience, and his track record proves for himself, over 1,000-yard rusher last year. So that's pretty much what I've seen, but I was really, really impressed with Zuberi's production.
Yeah, that 1,000 yards really gives him a leg up on the competition within camp, and I think we all believe, just similar to the quarterback competition, how Case Thompson is assuming to be the starter. The quarterbacks, running back's a different situation. You can play guys with different situations, lean on one guy more than the other. But Larry McCammon is the assumed starter. Of the two of Zuberi and Kobe, Richard, who of the two has stood out most to you to either rival him for that top spot or get themselves at that number 2 spot?
For me, in that case, I would say Kobe Lewis. He transferred from Purdue over the spring, and it got himself acclimated in the FU culture, learning under Herman's system, under Charlie Fry's system, and of course Chris Perkins. Shout out to Chris Perkins, the running backs coach of the Owls. It's pretty clear that he has adjusted very well under this particular system that Herman has installed for FU, and his experience over at Purdue, with his ability, when healthy, to really produce on the field, gain a lot of yardage and get some touchdowns here and there. That ability of his makes him a very solid candidate to compete with Larry McCammon for the first spot. Though at the end of the day, I do believe that Larry McCammon will be the top dog in that running back group, with Kobe Lewis right behind him at second.
I think that's a safe assumption to make. I feel like that competition between those two for second and third might be a little closer than first and second, but a very good problem to have. And it looks like the offense, there's just so much positivity, just like we talked last week when Zach and JJ and I were here on the podcast talking about there's just so much positivity to be had on the offensive side of the ball. And we then transitioned that into the defensive side of the ball, where last week we were a little more concerned about who's going to show up and show out. Starting here with a quote from safety coach Derek Gibson, and something that he emphasized, and I really love to see that from one of the coaches, is the word violence. And football, I don't gotta be the first person to tell you, football is a very violent sport, and you're really you're trying to organize violence in a way to be more violent than the opposition. I'm just gonna open this up to whoever wants to go out there first. When you think of the word violence, is that a word that you would assign to the practices you've seen so far?
I mean, just again, the one practice, I would say maybe the most important practice, because the pads were on today. I remember watching this one drill with the linebackers, and it was probably one of the more violent drills I've seen, where you basically are going at the guy with full force and picking him up. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, like you said, it seems like that word is in the heads of not only just the coaching staff, but in the players as well. I do still have my question marks. I mentioned them in the last pod. I mentioned them in my pre-camp story, and they were kind of just sort of repeated by Herman today. Just sort of like that inside linebacker position is something that you're kind of waiting for a guy to kind of step up. Could it be a Justice Cross? You know, could it be some other guys on the team that can really just step up and really fill that hole? DBs, but Smoke is obviously a solid player, and Jaden Williams really showed that, but is someone going to fill in that sort of T.J. Young sort of role, or the Zion Gilbert role that was filled in prior years? So obviously with the full pads on now, you're going to see more of that as we kind of get through the days and the scrimmages now. So it's going to be a very vital camp for the defense, maybe out of all the position groups. But I will say that, again, the defensive line group just still looks absolutely monstrous, and that is something that I cannot wait to see, kind of those line of scrimmage battles for FAU, whether it be on the offensive line, but now the defensive line. Again, we talk so much about Evan Anderson. It's kind of like you have to see it to believe it in front of you, because the guy's huge, he's monstrous, he's just a game wrecker. But even guys like Jacob Merrifield and Latrell Jean, and again, the depth of that position is something that it's going to be really awesome to see this year. But again, still have my question marks.
Yeah, I think those question marks are definitely something that it's not going to be able to be answered today. It's not going to be able to really be answered in camp until you see them go against a live offense that is preparing for them. But there are those concerns that we've had. In JJ, we talked about this last week about the different position groups. And like Zach just mentioned, the defensive line is the one consistency that you expect to be there. Of the other position groups on the field, which position group have you been most impressed by on the defense, JJ?
What defensive line count?
Well, if you want to just go with them, go ahead.
I'm really impressed with the D-line. I mean, Coach Maggot has been coaching these guys so hard. Every day they've been at it, doing every drill, working so hard at it. And I'm so impressed with this D-line. I mean, Jaden Wheeler, Evan Anderson, two guys in specific who have been very, very good in terms of this D-line. And I really like, the drills they're doing. They're trying to, from what I've seen, stand their ground and rip through the sleds to keep their balance. So I'm really, really impressed with this D-line in particular on the defensive group.
Okay.
And I just think what Coach Maggot has done, I think he's a phenomenal coach. He coaches them so hard, and the drills he's been giving, I'm so confident in this D-line. And, I think they could, really impress people this year and get many sacks. So, yeah.
Go ahead, Zach.
I was gonna say, when you have a coach named Coach Maggot, I think it helps a little bit, just kind of keeping the guys in order. So, I mean, I completely 100% agree. Another position group I want to say is maybe the outside linebackers, because, again, it's like we saw how really exciting Jalen Wester can be from last season, and now you're going into this season, and he's just kind of prone to taking a step up. Morvin Joseph, Xavier Peters. That part of the linebacker group I'm very excited to see throughout this camp and as we get into the season. I already mentioned the inside linebackers, but yeah, there is some really exciting stuff about this defense, but there's also some holes there, and I'm hoping that Rock Valentani can really kind of channel that sort of defensive stuff that he kind of the stars that he created once he was here several years ago, or way more. So if he could do that here, I mean, it's going to just prove so beneficial for these guys.
Richard, you've been at the camp more than any of us here, and you've seen how this team has grown over the last week. Could you fill us in on? We know our Evan Andersons are going to be somebody to look out for in the season to come. But for the more casual viewer, what are some names on defense that has stood out for you going into as we're 3 weeks away from the regular season?
Well, when it comes down to it, the position I wouldn't really look at closely is safeties. Look, of course, we do have our Armani Eli Adams and our Dwight Toombs, who would probably be the top two options at safety. But then you have somebody like Josh Moore, who came from UCLA before the 2022 season. Did not have a lot of reps during last season, but he has a lot of potential to really stand out among the safeties group, among the group at safety. Under safeties coach Gary Gibson, he's probably learned a lot after his first season with the Owls, and probably will want to make a bigger impact than he did the year prior. And then another name I would bring up is Jerron Morris, who transferred from Texas State earlier over the summer, and he's been playing with the safeties. And from looking at his stats from Texas State, he has a lot of experience on his resume. He played the last 5 seasons with Texas State, and he's accumulated a lot of tackles and caught a good number of interceptions while he was there. So with that ability, he could also be in the running for one of the starting jobs at safety, and is definitely a name worth keeping an eye on. And when it comes to Rob Bellantoni, he has a lot of work to do when it comes to linebackers, but especially with the inside linebacker group, as Zach mentioned earlier. But they do have Eddie Williams coming back to lead the group. He'll probably be the likely starter at that group. He's recovering from surgery over this past spring, and he looks pretty good and in shape throughout fall camp so far. And another name I would like to bring up from the inside linebacker is Jared Gerald, who Coach Herman gave his personal congratulations to Gerald upon Gerald getting his scholarship with the football team, which is a very special moment for him, Herman, and the rest of the Owls from that team. So it's definitely definitely a lot of potential from the defense that is worth looking into for FU fans and the casual sports fan alike.
I'm so glad he brought up the scholarship, something that I completely forgot to bring up at some point. It's so good to see, especially in when you're coming to this camp where it's a very stressful time period for a lot of these guys. Your futures can be decided on just a few weeks, how much you impress, and to see the weight lifted off someone's shoulders that they're going to be on scholarship, they don't have to worry about money as much as they did previously, and just as a team bonding moment to all celebrate your brother that he got to get this accomplishment. And it's a beautiful moment for the entire team. Real good, positive moment. Really well executed by the FAU team. And through this first week and a half of training camp, of the fall camp, I think there's been a lot of exciting storylines, a lot of things to be excited for, and a lot of growth to continue to have for this football team. Switching gears as we round off the show, to talk a little bit about the basketball team, who we just found out they're going to be in the Dicky V Invitational on December 5th, taking on Illinois. Some of us here got to experience the wonderful time it was in New York last time for the FAU Owls as they won the Sweet 16 and the Elite 8 in the NCAA tournament. JJ, to you, what does it mean to see FAU continue to get this respect after the tremendous season they're coming off of, being in these glorious events such as the Dicky V Invitational?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's great for the university. Like, the basketball team has gained so much respect, and especially being in the invitational in New York against Illinois is going to be so exciting to see. I'm very excited for this thing, and it means a lot. We're going to be playing some P5 teams in 2 invitationals, so it's just like so exciting to see, and I'm just excited for this basketball season to kick off.
Yeah, very excited because we know we're very excited for what the FAU football team can be, but that excitement is just as high as what we know the basketball team should be. And Zach, we were there in New York. We had to me, I still call it the best weekend of my life, and this is gonna be the first opportunity for the basketball team to go back there. We're still quite a few months away from the basketball season starting, but do you think the team has the ability to transfer that momentum, not just for the invitationals that they're in, but the success that they saw at the end of last year, even though they fell just short? What is your sense on the ability to carry that momentum over into the next season?
Yeah, and before I answer that, we were there in New York, but man, I was there in Houston, and it was
Yeah, yeah,
fun, to say the least. No,
yeah.
but seriously, but again, like, can they carry the momentum? I absolutely think they can, because again, I don't think it's that. I always say, oh, it's debatable, but it really isn't. I mean, that's the greatest single season in FAU athletics history, right? I mean, and they even win a national championship, right? They go to the Final Four, and just on a buzzer beater they lose, right? So again, I think they can. Obviously, there's gonna be a lot of eyes on the program now. Can they recreate what they did? I don't know. I don't know if they can exactly do what they did, but they're gonna be pretty close to what they did. I think this is a damn good team. You're returning the two best players, Janelle Davis and Elijah Martin, on your guys. You're having guys like Rosado and Golden coming back, and not to mention other guys like Brennan Lorient and others who are just now starting to more develop and get into their roles. This team could be even more dangerous, and maybe it's going to be more work for Dusty May to kind of see who fits where and what lineups work. But again, getting all these opportunities like, the Dicky V Invitational and playing at Disney and doing all these, playing these big schools, it's just huge for the program. And again, I think that this is going to be a really exciting season for basketball.
To add on to that question, Jacob, I think that, yes, we can carry through that momentum from last year, and I didn't think we reached our ceiling last year. I thought our ceiling was a national championship, and I thought we would deserve that. I didn't think that, we sort of lost focus towards the end of the San Diego State game, but we're returning every single player besides point guard Michael Forrest. And looking at this team, it's so stacked from start to bottom. It's just really, really good of a team. You're returning Brian Greenlee, Jalen Gaffney, John L. Davis, Elijah Martin, Vlad Golden, Giancarlo Rosado, Brennan Lorient, Isaiah Gaines, Alejandro Alot. Top to bottom, this team is so good and so talented. And I'm so excited. I think we can win a national championship. I think we should be favored to win a national championship. We have arguably the best player in the country in Janelle Davis, and I'm so excited for this basketball season.
I love that. I love that hype. I love that excitement, and I hope it stands true. The one sad thing was when I was Googling the basketball schedule, and like you mentioned, JJ, we do play in two invitationals, and I was looking up the Butler game, and when you look up Butler FAU, you see the shot by San Diego State's Butler as pretty much the only thing listed on Google. So if anybody is trying to figure out the Butler FAU game, just don't go to Google because you're going to be very upset with the results, unfortunately.
That is irony at its best, I think.
Yeah, but life goes on.
I did the exact same thing to see if FU ever faced against Butler in its basketball program history, and that's all I see.
Yeah.
The Butler game. That's harsh. And I'll never forget your reaction when you called the game for our radio, Jacob.
Yeah. That was
I felt exactly the same way.
It's I'm sure it's buried now on House of Highlights, but if you go all the way back to April on House of Highlights, you will see some guy recording over my shoulder over here. Ball shot goes up over here, and then as the entire comment said, I just died. I just laid out and died. That was, Richard, you were there. You were there in New York and Houston?
I was in Houston.
That's what I thought. That's what I thought. So the three of us got to experience that together. But while we still can, we're going to wrap it up there on a mostly positive note. There's been a lot of positivity around the camp, and then this news for the basketball team only continues to expose the brand and get the school out there and just continue the growth as well as going into the AAC. So a lot of great things to talk about when it comes to FAU athletics, and we will continue to do so here on Inside the Burrow. Jacob Kelly, Zach Weinberger, Richard Pereira, JJ Metz. Gentlemen, we thank all y'all for coming, and we thank all y'all for watching. If you're watching here on the YouTube channel, make sure to get down there in the comments, let us know what you think. Let us know about some other camp storylines that you're excited to hear about, maybe something that we can talk about on the next episode. Also down there, subscribe. Appreciate all y'all very much for watching today. Thank y'all very much. Have a great rest of your day. Take care, everybody.